Testing.
afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the University of Colombo, Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the University of Colombo Computing Teachers Association, I warmly welcome you all to this special occasion. This event is organized by UCCTA, UCCTA Trade Union for teachers at UCSC, affiliated with FUTA. I won't take much of your time, and I will keep my welcome speech brief, limiting to just 3 minutes. As you know, this event is meant to recognize the contribution of Dr. Weerasinghe and his contribution to the computing field internationally and locally, and particularly to the University of Colombo and University of Colombo School of Computing. While organizing this event, I recognize his trade union activities. And usually all the trade union activists become administrators, but Dr. Ruvan took the different path, and he was an administrator and later involved in many trade union activities. And we had many issues, but we hadn't any issue with the trade union activities, as far as I can remember. And here the role of the UCCTA is to provide a platform for the audience to listen to the Dr. Ruvan's inspiring speech, as well as share your memories and well wishes with Dr. Ruvan. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Dulip Herath, who is not here, and his intellectual contribution. And we were very much inspired by last lecture at CMU, and we were discussing about various titles for this talk. And we came up with several names, and I forwarded one of them to Dr. Ruvan, the final version. But Dr. Ruvan came up with an even better term, that is Manaskara. When I looked at the term Manaskara, there are various definitions. So one of them is, it's in Mahayana Buddhism. It refers to inward reflection or thoughts, particularly in the context of developing the right view. So this is the ideal title for the talk, and thanks for suggesting the name. And also thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and joining with us to share your experience, insights, and perspectives. Now I would like to invite Dr. Nalin Ranasinghe to give a formal introduction to Dr. Ruvan. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and friends. We are gathered here today to bid farewell to Dr. Ruvan Weerasinghe, a colleague, a mentor, and an institution builder. Hopefully, we are not saying a permanent goodbye. He has a long and distinguished service spanning more than 35 years at Institute of Computer Technology, the Department of Statistics and Computer Science, and the UCSC. As Ruvan will describe about himself much better than I can do, I wish to highlight some significant milestones in his career at UCSC. Ruvan became the second director of UCSC following Professor V.K. Samaranayaka's tenure for a period of 6 years from 2004. Filling the shoes of a visionary like Professor V.K. Samaranayaka for a young academic is not an easy task at all. And we felt the difference. But Ruvan was able to guide the young UCSC ship in difficult waters throughout the time in his tenure. He pioneered the study of computational linguistics, which was later usurped by the emergence of generative AI, as we all know. He set up the UCSC Language Technology Lab, which continues to date and has produced several PhDs who are now serving the UCSC as academics and other universities in Sri Lanka. His research interests have since been expanded into bioinformatics, and through bioinformatics, he has helped the IBM-BB sister institute of the University of Colombo in its formative years. He has contributed to numerous other institutes in Sri Lanka during his term as director of UCSC, such as UGC, the NSF, ICTA, LEARN, LSF, the CERT, and Export Development Board. He has been a visiting professor at the Management and Science University of Malaysia and a visiting faculty member of the Umeå University in Sweden. He is a recipient of the European Union Nursing Fellowship and also a Fulbright Award holder at CMU. After his early retirement this year, he has joined the Informatics School of Computing as its academic director and is helping to build up the research capacity of that particular institute. We wish Ruvan a healthy life and many more years of active and fruitful service to the higher education landscape in Sri Lanka, especially in this tumultuous time for computing, advances in computing, as you know, in the field. I now invite Ruvan Weerasinghe to deliver his farewells lecture on Manaskara, a self-reflection as an academic journey and future predictions for computing in Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. think it's a very difficult thing to speak at an event like this because there's such a diverse audience. I want to first thank every one of you. The UCCTA didn't tell me initially, so I thought this was going to be like for the union. And so Rasika said, you better speak in Sinhala. So I was scratching my head, how can I do this? So that's how the title came, Manaskara. What I meant is reflections. Some reflections in some way may not be all connected very nicely, but let's try to have the slides on, please. It's actually from my now defunct, long defunct blog. I think when Blogger first came or something. The graphic is inspired by joining the dots. But before I start, I have to start by saying that there are too many people to thank. So the whole talk will be about people to thank. So I'm really only having one. Okay, let me use the. So I want to start by expressing my gratitude to all these people who work behind the scenes here, starting with the director and the board of management and all the academics. This is indeed a very rare opportunity. You don't get an opportunity to look back very often in your life. As I said, the number of people are too large, and you saw some of them up here, the ones who really were behind, but so many others behind the scenes. And so this is a time for me, thank you for giving me this opportunity to think about what is important as opposed to what is urgent. Yeah, it's working. So I don't have my whole talk on the slides. I just have some placeholders to remind myself what I have to say. So I start with calamity. Calamity is a great teacher. Calamity is a great teacher. And when I first became the director of the School of Computing, in the first week, I think some of you may remember, a big branch fell on my car windscreen. And so some people said, this doesn't seem to be a good sign. And within 6 months, there was a tsunami. And I must say that there was no amount of preparation could have served in that case. So there were so many people who came around to help us to get over as an institution and also as a country. And then, of course, we had COVID. That was much after. But all these calamities were good places for us to do what Rasika first asked me to do, introspection. So it's a time when, so if we came out of COVID and we just went back to what we were doing before, then we are to be pitied more than any other, right? Because that was a time when we could actually look inside. Gaze away from the urgent to the important, from the temporal to the eternal. So during this time, I realized that I have been feeding my mind, but not my body and my spirit. By the way, this is just a model, body, mind, and spirit. And as one of my greatest teachers taught me, it's only a model. I still remember Professor Valentine Joseph, after talking about relativity and all these things, is this real? He asked us, is it real? And like we were shocked, like, because he's told us, so it should be real. But then he said, nah, this is not real. This is a model. It stood, stuck in my head that whatever we do, they are all models. But it's useful, so if the model is useful, and so the body, mind, and spirit. And so something I did during COVID, after COVID, was I realized, okay, we are mostly during the day, work day, we are feeding our minds. Right? We are not really taking care too much of our bodies, except feeding them, I guess, and our spirit. So starting that year, actually, 2020, the beginning of 2020, I realized we had to get our priorities. I had to get my priorities right. So early morning, and I knew the one that gets left behind most is feeding the spirit. So I start with that, and then have a workout, and then I go to my work day. And it helps us to also be outward focused when we do that. We don't have to then be inward focused as before. It awakens a certain kind of care for others as well as the environment. More recently, I think I really got hooked on Twitter because of, not the Aragalaya, I think it was when, for the first time, Sri Lankans started thinking about resistance. And this was before the Aragalaya. I mean, Aragalaya was like the climax of it. And then I realized I need an app to make sure I don't, I remember now, those Fridays, when every Friday there was a decision, right? When Friday night there's a decision, some huge decision. And so engaging with that, I suddenly realized I'm spending 2-3 hours on Twitter. And then I said, okay, we have to watch this. But it became much more, and with Aragalaya it became much more. And so we realized that when we are immersed in that world of social media, it's not just our time. If it was only our time, it would have been not that, well, it's still pretty serious, but it is a kind of a rewiring. It reinforces certain weights in our neuron connections. And so our brains kind of get rewired. Social media is one. I think TV series is another. And of course, adult content. There are a lot of people who are like stuck with that. So the issue is with velocity and intensity, which is not there with books. Because books, you have time to reflect, to weigh, to adjust. Whereas here, just one thing to the other. And so we don't really get that time that we need. So this leads me to my journey. I don't know how many of you saw this movie, but it is from Kung Fu Panda, I don't know what number. So what happened is that this guy, this clumsy, what is it? Some kind of bear, panda, sorry. The panda was trying to peep and see who the next master was going to be, because this guy on the right, Uguay, was going to go away. So he had to have a new warrior. So as he was about to christen the new warrior, this guy got himself catapulted from far away, and he falls right in front of Ugue's feet. And so Ugue makes him the warrior. And everybody shouts, but that was just an accident. It was an accident. And I think this line is very well known. Ugue looks and says, there are no accidents. There are no accidents. My worldview is slightly different, but I had a lot of accidents. The A-levels was the first accident. It's a bit of a long story, but I will tell you about that later. But admission to university was an accident, yes. And then becoming an academic, yes, was an accident. If Kevin Senimiratna was here, he would have told me that he one day said, why don't you come here? And I was like, I can't come here, I don't know enough of this stuff. No, you come and see, and that's how it started. And then, of course, grad studies. In my worldview, as I said, not everything is an accident. However, there is a condition in the scriptures that say that for certain kind of people, everything will work for the good. We can talk about that during our tea. So the very, as Nalin said, at 44, when I was asked to be the director, the first problem was not taking that role, but following a person. Following a person who led from the front. So Professor Samarnaka's model, and my academic colleagues here still laugh at me when I refer to that example, but that model of leadership is what is known as the bus driver model. So you have 100% confidence because he knows the way, and the rest of us don't really have to do much except we shouldn't jump out of the window or something. Other than that, everything is set. And so now when it came to my hands, I knew that this is, I can't do this model. Luckily, my friend, who I'll refer to later, introduced me to the orchestra conductor model of leadership. And there, if you know, the orchestra conductor, I remember as a young kid thinking that guy is an utter fraud. He's just doing this. And, all the clever guys are playing instruments. This guy is just doing this, right? And yet, that's the guy who knows how to get the sound from all the players. So we had a great team. Some of them are still here. And I think that was a big learning experience. I thank the Fulbright, because the year before that I was at Carnegie Mellon, and I went to absolutely every staff development training I could, whether it was leadership or emotional intelligence, absolutely everything. Conflict resolution, because there were obviously a lot of conflicts after that. But it also, if we kind of roll back a bit, in my journey I had to decide on what am I going to specialize in. And in that time, a lot of importance was on what is called image processing, graphics. And so I scratched my head and thought, okay, I don't think I'll have the resources here back when I come back to do that stuff. And so I chose language processing. At that time, I thought that's probably the most impactful because of there was, computers didn't know how to work with Sinhala and Tamil. And also resource friendly. I didn't need very big computers to do that. Fast forward 30 years, and today it's one of the most wasteful ways of resources that we have in this field of large language models. I was recently, so another accident recently at the ICTA conference, and there was a person who was talking about 6th generation IoT devices, batteryless devices. And I was like, it hit home again. Okay, these people they are doing something good. And so over the last few months, I have been feeling the problem that we can't use these models, train these models in Sri Lanka. So practically already we were looking at how to do it more efficiently and with less resources. But with this, I realized it's more than just practicality. It's also morally untenable that we are using such massive amounts of energy to train these models. Some of these models, the training of the model, the energy used to train those models could have sustained a village for a year, something like that. I also learned something from a 25-year-old who said that in his life he can do only 5 things. I was like really shocked. Why is that? He said anything worth doing takes at least 10 years. He was on his first thing. From 20 to 30, he was going to do that. 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70. I suppose, I don't know what he wanted to do, but 5 things. I realized actually he had, and this I read in my old age myself in 2015, and I thought, okay, this is the time I have to think about that. And so it was already, I had already well past all these years. So I thought, okay, I have about 15, 20 years left. So I put 3 concentric circles. The smallest circle, addressing ragging. And I thank the people here who have joined with me during that period. And we didn't succeed, but COVID did much better than us. The second concentric circle was a little bit of a bigger one, and it had this lofty kind of title, Eradicating Tuition. This is obviously, so I had put 5 years for ragging, 10 years for tuition. And of course, it is still here, except that I think some people have, I think UCSC took a big step several years ago in trying to use technology to make all our content accessible. And then of course, now bigger and better scale is, what is it called? DEP education. I haven't really accessed, but I hear it's bigger and better. And the third one, the third bigger concentric circle, and it's ongoing, is about AI, which I will talk about a little later. But I also read this book called Halftime. Some of you have read it. It looks at this, your journey through life quite differently to how we normally do. Particularly in Sri Lanka, we think that the most productive years are in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's why we go into parliament and stay on so long, right? So this person said, no, actually, there is this so-called season of success where you are, doing that, and then you hit like a crisis point in your 40s, around 40s, 50s. What people call midlife crisis probably is very narrow, but this is something like that, an identity crisis. And after that, he says some people continue in that season of success. They try to. After their 50s, 60s, they still try to go that way. And generally, that doesn't end in a good result. But there is the other side. They give up. They give up. Okay, now I'm old and I don't have anything more to give, and they go down. And that is disaster too. So he recommends that the next period of your life is a season of significance. Season of significance. And so soon after I gave up my heading the school, I said I want to be a student counselor, because also admin positions put a big distance between you and students. And so for the next 3 years, I was a student counselor, trying to repair those, those big gaps. So the season of significance for me started at that point. I was already 50. So you can imagine how old I am now. One of the things, of course, we do in our particular job is teaching, but about 15 years ago, I think we realized our job is not teaching. It is facilitating learning. And so we've been doing this thing, moving from teaching to learning for about at least 15 years. There is a management theory, I think, that says that you have this type 1 manager who considers all the people who work for him as lazy and, dumb and generally to be managed. Right? So they have all these rules and control them. And then so equivalent for a teacher is like the teacher who says, we have the dumbest batch this year. And that's a common thing, right? That's not so uncommon. Right? Each batch is getting dumber. Sorry, I hope there are no students around here. And then we are supposed to know, no, there are some who go out of that and say, no, that's not right. It's that it's not who the student is, but what the teacher does. So what the teacher does is the more important thing. So that's a type 2 teacher. And they do fantastic things. Most of them you can find in the tutories. Right? So you have to crack a joke, you have to have a good sense of humor, have stories, you have to have a good inventory of stories that you can dish out at various times. And basically you've got to be an entertainer. Right? And so type 2 teachers generally get frustrated because after doing all that, putting all that effort, sometimes you have the same result, or you have one or two who take, who remember your jokes, but that's about it, right? So it was the goal was never about getting the student to say wow, but to deposit. I don't know whether you are familiar with the term earworm. Sometimes in the morning you hear a song or a tune, And then the whole day is there with you, right? That's called a earworm. It's like, it keeps going in your ear and you're always reminded of that song or tune or whatever. So I'm adapting that to a mind worm. How do you infect the student with that idea, that concept that you're trying to teach, which is the goal. And we will talk about, that's where the type 3 teacher comes, but that's a bit of suspense. And the goal being to change their thinking, or even better, their behavior. And so this is the goal. And we will, as I said, have to go over and beyond a type 2 teacher. But Rasika also has put the title somewhere, and the future of computing. I never bargained for that, but because it was there, I thought I'll have to include something here. This is called crystal ball gazing, but I'm not really going to do that a lot. But because I came from the area of human language processing, which was like the holy grail of AI, we first went to the domain expert. And the domain expert for language is a linguist. I don't know whether there are any linguists here. There should be if our group has been successful. Yeah, at least there's one linguist here. So the linguist told us this is the way grammar works. There are grammar rules, and then there are exceptions, and then there are exceptions to those exceptions. And we really tore our hair trying to implement, trying to encode those rules. These were mostly before the 80s. In the 80s and 90s, people suddenly said, why do we want to do this? Let's just look at language as it happens in text. And so the statistical language modeling era was the 80s and 90s. And then after the turn of the millennium, we had the deep learning models, particularly those based on the transformer architecture, which is very recent, 2018, 17 and 18. That led to what are called large language models. And what we know today is, I was going to say generative AI, but maybe ChatGPT. That's what we know these things as. So what are these actually? Are they stochastic parrots, as somebody had mentioned? Are they stochastic parrots? They're statistical models with some randomness built into them, and they predict the next word. Or are they something more? Are they actually intelligent agents? And so there is this big quest for general intelligence. It's called AGI, or artificial general intelligence. Some people are not happy with that. They want to go beyond artificial super intelligence, and things are going very, very fast. However, I feel we are at this place, a small anecdote, when after climbing Pidrutalagala, after climbing Siripada, some of us went to sleep, and then we woke up and somebody said, what is this mountain next to us? And it was Pidrutalagala. So shall we climb this? When you're young, you want to do it. So he said, okay, but how do we climb it? There was no road, because we were in some other side of the mountain. Then there was a scout, and he said, there is this power line. It's going to the top. So just follow the power line. So we also, he's a president scout, so we said, okay, and we followed him. And of course, he did some, made some marks on the trees and all, and we started, not trees, they were like small branches. We started going, we went up, and then when we came to the top of that, we realized, actually, that's not the hill. You go down and go to the next hill. So now that we were committed, right, we couldn't go back, so we went down and went up the next hill. And that was not it either. We did that 4 times. We did that 4 times before we went on the real hill and to the top. So I feel we are a bit like that. There's a lot of excitement. 2016, 17, there was a lot of excitement around something called AlphaGo, which we don't have time to talk about today. But it wasn't the so-called transfer learning miracle that everybody expected it to be. So creating an AI with agency is doesn't seem to be going very well, because we suddenly realize that it is not only our, I think Socrates, Plato, all this up to Descartes, all of them assume that our senses are fallen in some way, right? So we can't really rely on them. But they said our rational thinking, that is intact. That is not fallen. Over these past few years, we see how fallen that is, right? How fallible that is. And so, if we are trying to create this agent with our fallen, fallible minds, it's a bit frightening. So there are two ways that people look at this, either utopia, where people say, all these problems will be solved, and, and there are lots of apologies like this. Or the other extreme, right? Those who say everything is going to be finished. These AIs are going to take over and we are going to be wiped out. And the second seems to be the more real thing when we are looking at it from inside. Unless the brightest and the best refocus this whole enterprise. It turns out that Google wasn't the first to release one of these things, because they had the so-called godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, in their team, who obviously didn't want these things to be let loose in the public. Though one of the employees actually left saying that their large language model showed signs of consciousness. But OpenAI had no such qualms, and we had some really, really bright people, but also people who were quite mercenary about getting this out. But one of the brightest minds there, someone also I bumped into in a computational linguistics conference, Ilya Sutskever, he left OpenAI. He formed a company called Safe Superintelligence. So if you have the brightest of those minds, such as these people, going into areas like that, then there is some hope. And there's key roles to be played for all those who are now at the bottom of the pyramid. Humanities people, anthropologists, sociologists, psychologists, ethicists, religious studies, philosophies, humanists, even lawyers. Right? We need these people. These are the people who can actually help to steer us on a better path. I've learned a lot from my students, and one of them, who is here somewhere, introduced me to Yuval Noah Harari. Very easy historian to read, and I highly recommend to help understand the past and where we are headed. I was not a good reader, and yet I can read. His books are very, very readable. So, but even more complicated things today can be digested very easily thanks to these tools. How many of you have used something called Notebook LM? Notebook LM, there are a few people. Particularly, I like the podcast because I'm lazy to read. Podcast. So you put your most complicated paper or book and ask it to generate a podcast. And I think last week they also released. So you can stop the podcast halfway and ask a question. Mind-blowing, really. Absolutely mind-blowing. But it makes these things much more accessible. So the EU AI Act is something anybody in AI has to understand it and read it. But I've never read an act. These tools allow you to actually read those or actually chat with them, interact with the documents. It is said that in modern science, scientists, one of the goals was to discover the mind of God. But the modern AI companies seem to want to go beyond that, to actually play God and create our own agents. So, what's the difference between them and us, these AI agents and us? And I tell my students is this. This is the difference. And I give the illustration of the salesman. So our School of Computing has a lot of experts in computers. But if any of them goes to us to buy their next laptop, the salesman is going to know more about that laptop than them. About the L1 cache, L2 cache, L3 cache, everything, right? But that's because it's learned, it's read and learned, much like the way we do exams, right? Study and write, but not internalize. And so, the difference between someone who has experienced something and someone who just learns that is going to be more and more important. Particularly with Gen Zs, for instance, their quest for authenticity, right? They want to see what is real, or is that fake? Fake is one of their favorite words, right? Everything is fake. Oh, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake, right? So their quest for authenticity is going to be reinforced only by experience. So we are, as type 3 teachers, it's neither who the student is, nor what the teacher does, but what the student does as a result of what you do. So neither who the student is, nor what the teacher does, but what the student does. So our task is then to create effective and relevant learning experiences for our students. So that brings us to the question, can't we then give those experiences to the AI? Can't we give those experiences to the AI? There is research to now try and parameterize smell. I think some people here also are doing that. Parameterize taste. We have parameterized vision and hearing, but smell, taste, and touch probably already parameterized in robotics. Right? Which brings us to the question, even if all the senses are simulated accurately, the question is, how do they affect the processing inside the AI system? How does it affect? Right. So, how does it affect the mental, emotional state of this agent, leave alone the spiritual state? So, one side of the story is that we never really thought these LLMs will be intelligent. We just gave them the language ability to predicting the next word, and the rest is emergent behavior. Emergent behavior. So now we say that, okay, they are not very good at reasoning, so we train them on chain of thought kind of reasoning, and then they will also become rational. And if you go on like this, probably they will become sentient and they'll become conscious, even spiritual. Right? So I am saying we should worry about that reductionist way of thinking, and rather think about, so my own worldview is that distinction between humans and other agents, including animals, is discontinuous. It's not like a continuum. In the Bible it says God breathed. Humans are God breathed. So AI will be human breathed. AI is going to be human breathed. We are the ones who are breathing into it. So all this has made me, in my old age, think about an author that my friend Priyan Dias pointed me to. One article of his, Paul Feyerabend. His article was how to defend society against science philosophy. So now I'm thinking, maybe what's left of my life, I have to think about how to defend society against AI. So this is my epilogue. So many people to thank for and far too many. They are all influencers in the modern use of the term. They influence me. And of course, I learned from my biology people that actually we are influenced by much more than our parents or our genes, but genes throughout history. So in our genes, we also have probably Black Death and all kinds of things. Am I right? All these pandemic things and everything in our genes. Right? We have learned those things, and now probably COVID in the future. So it's very hard to actually be conscious of everyone who, everything that influences us. And of course, most of our parents' influence is also a bit difficult to see, except when we face situations. And more recently, I have realized that in Sri Lanka, I've been told there is a high prevalence of domestic violence. And then only I started thanking God for not seeing it at home. I mean, all those of you who haven't seen it at home, you are blessed. Because if you have seen it at home, the chances are that it will be perpetuated. Right? Because you don't see it as a... so obviously parents... and then of course I have a sister who... 3 boys and 1 girl means the sister gets all the attention, and yet she was a rebel. So she is the one who taught me how to be a rebel. And then there are of course 2 giants who influenced me. Both had the initials VK. When I first came to the university, and I was absolutely taken up with the way the JVP activists were organized. And in the same year, I met someone called Vinod Ramachandra, who made me look at a different worldview. And so in my 20th year on this earth only, I became a Christian. So Vinod taught me that religion is not it, but what is the worldview you hold. So you can be a Marxist in belief, but in action, a materialist. Right? You see a lot of them. Right? But how is your worldview aligned to your life? The other VK, of course, is our Professor VK Samarnayaka. Again, a bit like a parent, it's very hard to see what are the things I learned from him. Except that what I didn't learn from him was how to multitask. That ability was unbelievable, and I never learned it. But his motto was, nothing is impossible, don't break the rules, but bend them as far as possible, which is what you have to do when you're in the government sector. And then, of course, everybody will think it's a duty to thank your wife. I don't consider it a duty, but, not my wife, but my partner in this journey, the biggest partner in this journey, of course, is my wife, Natasha. And she has contributed to my journey much, much more than I have to hers. I'll need another lifetime to actually repay that, to make her journey more meaningful. And finally, of course, many, many of you. And I end with an anecdote, which again, I mean, a lot of these are influences from my wife. Anecdote, because I even learned something new this week, and this is this weekend. It's in a place called Alla, which I didn't know, near Nikavaratia. I know the Alla that we all know. This is a different Alla. It's a very rural place. And so there's this guy who came from hospital, and my wife met him. Siri. Siri, komada ispiritale. He went to the hospital in Variapola, Nikavaratia. Supiri, madam, Supiri. Nikavaratia hospital, Supiri. We are complaining about Sri Javardhanapura and Kalubovila. Right? Then she has asked, asked the wife, Manike, kavada the bande? Mama dahanamai. I say, Siri, what is this man? Dahanamai kellek banla. And his answer was, තාම ඒ වගේම ආදරේනේ. තාම ඒ වගේම ආදරේ. And, sorry, for those who don't understand, the hospital was amazing. And we are still in love. They are probably in their 60s or 70s or something like that. So, it made me think that you don't have to be happy all the time to be joyful. And that is my final slide. You don't have to be happy. You can be unhappy also sometimes. But be joyful. And turns out that that is primarily through contentment, but also being assured of the hope to come. And that's the message of Christmas. We lived for academic year in France, and they would say, Joyeux Noël. So just remember, this is a saying from, I think, a sports writer in the US who said this. For when the one great scorer comes to mark against your name, he writes not that you won or lost, but how you played the game. Something that someone wrote in my autograph book when I was a kid. Came back to my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful lecture. And we actually have few tokens of appreciation for you. So I would like to invite Professor Kapila Dias. Kapila, sir, I hope you are here. Okay. So to hand over this small token of appreciation to Dr. Ruvan Weerasinghe. I think it's better if we can move to the center of the stage. The photography people asked for that. Thank you, sir.
Well, all of us have a lot of wonderful memories with Dr. Ruvan. And Dr. Asika thought that we should write them down like the autograph, book of autograph, that's what you call it, right? We haven't written it for a long time, but his idea was brilliant, and we thought of what to write about him, and it was so hard because all these memories were so close to our heart that we didn't know what to write. And we got so emotional. I saw some people with tears in their eyes, not knowing what to write, because there were so many. And he was like a father to us, though he looks young and handsome and young at heart, but he has always been there for us. So we have a collection of writings. It was so hard to put them down into text. So, but we did our best, we tried, and there is a collection of what he means to us, written by most of the staff members here, and his goleas and colleagues. And I would like to call Dr. Rupika to present it to him.
And sir, we just got to know that one of your students has something, I think it's a pencil artwork that he has prepared. He's Mr. Damita Lianarachi. Thank you, sir. We actually reached the end of this event. I'm Asanga Sayakara. I'm the secretary of UCCTA, University of Colombo Computing Teachers Association. So my duty is to thank few people who actually worked hard, committee from UCCTA, who worked hard to prepare this, organize this event. First of all, Dr. Rasika Dayaratna, Professor Kapila Dias, Professor Damita Karunaratna, Dr. Shiromi Arunatilaka, and Dr. Rupika Weerasinghe. Thank you for organizing this wonderful event. And I would like to thank the director of UCSC and the administration for facilitating to have this wonderful event today here. I would like to thank, as usual, the ADMTC team led by Dr. Samantha Matararachi for preparing a lot of things for this event. Mr. Sudeepa, Mr. Shiranta, Mr. Ashinta, although he's not in Sri Lanka right now, and Ms. Tarushi for organizing the things in this place. And I would like to thank Director's Office, Ms. Renuka, Ms. Malsha, and Mr. Akila for helping us. And we would like to thank actually Dr. Nandasara and Dr. Nalin Ranasinghe for helping us in various ways. And Dr. Randil and his Language Technology Research Group, which was led by Ruvan sir for years. They helped us in various ways. And I would like to thank Ms. Nalisha and Ms. Sagarika, who, although they are not part of UCCTA, they actually helped us in so many ways. And I would like to thank the NOC, Network Operations Center of UCSC, Mr. Prageet, Mr. Dulanjan, and Mr. Tejan for helping us. And also, we were supported by multiple anonymous sponsors who didn't want to actually name them. So thank you so much for making this day beautiful. And even today, whenever I look at him, I'm always wondering, like, how can someone become like him? And I think he's really inspiring every time he's talking about something. And finally, I would like to thank all of you, all the friends and colleagues, and I recognize some of you, and I don't recognize many of you as well here. Thank you for being here to make this day beautiful and memorable for Dr. Ruvan. With that, I think we can conclude this event today. We have a small refreshment organized in the 5th floor. I would like to invite all of you to be there and chat and catch up with all the old friends that you haven't seen for years probably. And thank you for making this event successful.